Hello and welcome to the Basketball Addicts Podcast. All right, today is a fun one. Today we are really going to be bringing you guys really great content about the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Basically, what we've seen so far, so you guys can understand where we're at right now, what games we've seen. We've seen game one and two, the Golden State Warriors thrashing the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, beating up Luka Doncic.
You gotta say
And
all that?
we've
Is that necessary?
oh sorry, beating up the Dallas Mavericks. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend you like that. Luka Doncic list. Uh, and the Miami Heat Boston Celtics series. We just had an amazing game three where the Miami Heat took back home court advantage. Now they have a 2-1 series lead. A lot of interesting things going on in those two series. We're going to break down both of those series in depth for you. And anything else that comes up, we'll talk about that as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, are you ready to move? Which series do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about my favorite series, Boston
I don't even.
Miami.
Okay. Okay. So, what's your takeaway?
Um, Boston has the ability to beat this team. We've seen it. But from what I was seeing from those games is that they, the Miami Heat is a really, really, really good team, better team than what we've previously thought. And I don't want to sound like a hater because I like Boston, but Boston won that game where they blew them out strictly because it was like a once in million chance of them hitting that many threes. It
Are you
like
talking about Miami game three? Are you talking about
no
game three or game two?
game two
Okay.
game two. It like I saw so many threes go in. Marcus Smart was
Uh
hitting
huh.
step back threes. Jalen
That's not
Brown
gonna
was
continue.
that okay. He did hit one last night, so don't do that.
hmm
Jason Tatum was pulling up over. I mean, no, Jalen Brown was pulling up and hitting threes over Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, he's pretty special, Jalen Brown.
I that's like a one. I wouldn't say it's like a once in a lifetime thing, but it was like it's a
hmm
one off. I still believe that they can win in seven, but it's gonna take a lot more because the Heat they're similar to another team that we're gonna talk about today. They have a lot of offensive weapons, and that's what makes it really difficult for those dynamic duo teams and for teams that
hmm
really depend on the top two players of their on their team.
Yes. Yes.
When you depend on the top two or top one player, I'm looking at you, Luca. Um, there becomes a problem
Uh
because
huh.
if somebody can, if we can force 15 points out of a role player, then there's nobody to
Right.
counteract that because everybody's used to watching the ball. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
Not saying like the Boston
Yeah.
has done that this year or this playoff.
hmm
They really found different role players to step up at different times, but
hmm
their output never equals what the other team could really do. I mean, you might have a
hmm
great game from Grant Williams, a great game from Peyton Pritchard, but you're going to get 20 points from Bam, possibly. You might get 20 points from Victor Oladipo. You might get 20 points from Tyler Hero. From Peyton Pritchard, Grant Williams, you might get 15 to 18 points. You might get 20
Max.
points from Duncan Robinson. That's
hmm
80 points right there off the bench.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's
Yeah.
very scary when you have players on your team who can score efficiently and at a high level, but they're role players. So
Yeah.
now it becomes you it's no longer I think last year, right, when we did the playoffs, we did like, oh, these people have it's the one and the two, the three and the four. No, it's like one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, because that's how deep the
Yeah.
team goes. Because it's Jalen
hmm
Brown, Jason Tatum, okay, then you look at Bam, okay, Jimmy Butler, okay. Wait a second. Vincent, huh? Hero. Wait, this is too many.
Yeah.
Oladipo.
I
Lowry
think
if he wants
people
to.
I think people only really now being able to see, unless you're like a real big Miami Heat fan, Gabe Vincent. Gabe Vincent's a guy who's a really good backup point guard. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so many guys that just like do their job at an elite level over there for Miami. So I completely agree with where you're going with this. I just wanted to support your argument.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And one more thing that I will say is that when you look up efficiency,
Mm.
a
Yeah.
big picture of Jimmy Butler appears next to it. That man
Yeah,
does not play outside of his game at
that's
all.
a fact.
I mean, like we talk old school basketball. No, this is Jimmy's basketball. This is his version of
Mhm.
basketball and how he's able to constitute wins in the
Mhm.
modern NBA. We would have never
Yeah,
thought that a strictly mid-range scorer would be
it's what it
this
is.
great right now.
Mhm.
40 points and took 1 3 and missed it.
Yeah. Mhm.
40.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Mhm.
That's unheard of right now. So I
Yeah.
think that this is a good time to kind of switch because we should not think of the Miami Heat, even though they mimic a old school basketball team. We should not be calling them an old school basketball team because of the way that the NBA has shifted. We talked about this in the last podcast, and I would love to go back on this if you want to join me on it, Jay.
Mhm.
Is that the NBA has shifted to a more big dominated game and a more ISO score kind of ball movement kind of
Mhm.
dominated kind of game. Look at the Golden State Warriors. It's not their threes, it's the way they can move the ball. That's old school.
Yes.
You know, like how many
Yes.
passes are we going to get off? Think about
Mhm.
that San Antonio Spurs team. We've been moving toward it, but we've been ignoring it because the three percentage has went up. But
Yes.
really, look how many people touch the ball. Look
Mhm.
how the screens work now. Think
Yeah.
about that. And then also to point out to Jimmy Butler again, he does not play outside his game. That's a very
No,
efficient
no,
style of
no.
basketball that has really
Mhm.
came out of the 80s and 90s of basketball. They really don't
Mhm.
like if you're not a great three-point shooter, you're not taking threes.
Mhm.
You're living in the
It's true.
mid-range. Look at Jordan.
Mhm. There's a lot of guys that lived in the mid range during that era. Bernard King is somebody that who he kind of reminds me
Great
of
mid-range,
offensively.
great
Yeah.
mid-range shooter. He's
Mhm.
known for it.
Yeah. Alex English. Those
Yeah.
he's one of those kind of guys.
He's a really like he really takes skill within himself to the next
Mhm.
level, like those guys do.
Mhm.
Meaning
Yes.
that you're not expecting Jimmy to between the legs 360 windmill.
No.
No, but he's going to okay. Wait a second. I could jab you here. I could take you off the dribble here. He's
Mhm.
looking at different ways and avenues to be efficient. He doesn't have to step back three, even though we've seen him do it a couple times. He doesn't have to side step three. We don't have you don't have to come off the roll and knock down a shot. Even though he's clutch, he has a clutch and he can do that.
Mhm.
But he's really going to operate within what he's known for and what he's used to and what he knows he can get a high percentage shot. He really operates within that lane. He plays like a big because bigs of old have always played within the paint, within the high percentage shot area. That's
Yes.
10 to 12, that's 10 to 12, that's 10 to 15 feet out or 10 to 12
Mhm.
feet out. That's where he operates and that's where
Yeah.
he's the most dangerous. You let him get in there, it's over. It's automatic.
Yeah. He's an elite finisher for real. I completely agree with you that the game is moving that way, and my takeaways from this series. I want to start with Boston first. Is uh, I don't think it's over and out yet. I don't think, even though I chose the Miami Heat to win in seven, I'm not
Mhm.
like feeling super confident about them. Like it's gonna be a good series. I knew it was gonna be a good series. It's gonna go back and forth. They're probably gonna take game four. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment just because they won game three. So I really I like what I'm seeing from Al Horford. Al Horford's really a phenomenal passer. He really is being the veteran presence that this team needs, especially in the playoffs, and he's helping them so much in that aspect. The loss of Robert Williams hopefully comes back because I don't want this series to go to a certain team just because the other team was not healthy, not
That's
100%. So
I want to add something real
I
quick. That's exactly what it's looking like as well, especially with like all like the Boston Celtics have been hit with
mhm.
injury bugs. So I'm just like saying that in support of what you're going through.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then so did the Miami Heat. I mean, Kyle Lowry didn't play, I think, except last game. Jimmy Butler was out for the full second half of the last game.
Yeah.
They're saying he's going to come back next game. Marcus Smart has dealt with issues as well. So these two teams are hobbled a little bit to a certain extent. But yeah, when I'm talking about the Boston Celtics, man, I Jalen Brown is phenomenal. Jalen Brown, he might be even though Jason Tatum's more like flashy in his moves, Jalen Brown is just so gosh darn efficient.
Mhm.
He's one of those guys, man, who's really taken huge steps in the past 2 years, and we're really seeing it come to fruition this year. And he's somebody that's got to be talked about to 15 to 20 best players in the NBA. He's one of those guys, man, that's a dynamite with the ball in his hands. That his ability to do all the things he does is really impressive. His shot creation, his ability to attack the rim, his ability to put pressure at the rim, his he really understands the game. And when I talk about the Miami Heat, I really liked what I saw. That one, Duncan Robinson's touching the floor finally. They definitely need his shooting. And another thing that I really think was a huge difference when Kyle Lowry came in the game was the ball moved a lot more. I watched that game 3 and I was like, "Man, everybody's moving a lot more than I'm used to seeing. It's a lot of player movement. It's a lot of people cutting to the baskets, a lot of people getting backdoor cuts and getting buckets from those things." And they just seemed Kyle Lowry really puts that makes everything easier for this team. He's really integral even if he scores less than 8 to 10 points per game because he fits into the scheme of the team, which is bulk possession, efficient offense, and stellar defense. They want to play under 100 points in a game. We're going to manage the game better than you. And he fits
Mhm.
that to a T because he's such a veteran. He's such a great passer. Um, and so I really like what I've seen from Jimmy Butler as well. Tyler Hero really, even though he may not have dropped a ton of points last night, I saw a lot of drive and kicks where he probably added 9 to 12 points just from his impact from being able to create space for himself, and the defense having to react to him. So that it's really good to see Tyler Hero playing well, even though I think he should be getting more minutes and etc. It's my only gripe with the Heat. Bam Adebayo, game 3. That was the best game I've ever seen Bam Adebayo play. It was a defensive clinic like usual, but the man dropped, I think, almost 30 or 29 or something like that.
Something
Multiple
like that.
assists. He really stepped out when Jimmy Butler was not on the floor as an aggressor to take the ball and try to score and just be that aggressive force that they needed on the floor. So it was a huge step up moment. And another thing, game 3, this is where I go on a little bit of a rant here. I was absolutely extremely upset by the referees in game 3. All right, so let me describe to you the game if you were watching. First quarter, Miami Heat are up by over 20. And basically, for the rest of the game, they let Boston get away with so many extreme things that they didn't let Miami get away with, that it led to the game being closer than it should have been. This game was a 6 point difference at the end of the game, 109 to 103. This game should have been a 15-point difference. The reason why is because of turnovers. Now I'm sure you may not know that turnovers can really impact a basketball game, but it's one of the biggest impactors if it's a huge difference. And usually people are like, "Oh, the turnover difference was 14 to 9 today. It's going to make it a real impact on the game." Well, no, the turnover difference between these two teams were 9 for Miami and 24 for the Boston Celtics.
Mhm.
They had Miami Heat had 19 steals last night. 19 steals, and the Boston Celtics turned over the ball 24 times. Oh, and why do I think that the officiating was terrible? So that shows you that this game should have been a blowout because the turnover difference. They
Mhm.
shot very similar percentage wise, very similar in every other category. It's just that they turned over the Miami Heat had 22 more possessions with the ball than the Boston Celtics. Like that's a clear advantage.
Yeah.
Okay, so why am I telling you this? Why am I upset about the officiating? Well, because before the last minute of the game, before Boston Celtics started fouling the shooters to try to get them to the line so they can try to get a three and try to, the ticky tack things that people do at the end of games to try to make a comeback. The Miami Heat shot 6 free throws, and the Boston Celtics shot 30. This game was officiated extremely terribly. I mean, there was a lot of times, man, where I saw people get ran over. I saw Jalen Brown basically be able to throw his elbow into whoever he wanted to. I saw Al Horford be able to extend his elbow on anybody who he wanted to. I mean, there were some times where you would see a foul call against Gabe Vincent for using his shoulder to try to create some space and like not really do it to an extreme extent. And then Jalen Brown like football, like stiff arm somebody, and Gabe Vincent will get the call for against him for offensive foul, and Jalen Brown would get 2 shots at the free throw line. Like it was really egregious and bad. I don't really talk about refereeing that much because I feel like you know everybody always talk about refs reasons because sometimes can be overblown. This is the worst refereed game I've seen all years. That's why I'm talking about it. It's one of those things where you watch the NBA. It's like you guys can't do this because it looks pretty sus. You know what I mean? Like, of course you want to keep the game close. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if halftime those referees came in and said, "Oh, you guys are missing these calls. You guys got to adjust them." I don't know what they did, but it was the most one-sided foul called game I've ever seen, and they almost lost the Miami Heat this game 3 because of it because the game became close. So I'm really upset at that. It was really egregious. It was really, really, truly, terribly officiated game. And it's just you shouldn't have to deal with that as a basketball fan. So yeah, that's my takeaways on game 3.
Um, well, one thing I will say is, they did play in Boston, so they have home court advantage. So, I mean, you said this yourself, and we've said it plenty of times on this platform is that when you get into the playoffs, there's a level of physicality that's allowed, but it should be allowed both ways. I will agree with you with that.
Yes.
But because it is home court, they do get a little bit extra, and sometimes, to the untrained eye, you know what I mean. These things may be missed, but to someone like Jason and I, we would see these things, so we would understand that
Mm-hmm.
there is a clear um one-sidedness of it.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. It was really terribly done. And the sad thing is it was I really love this series. This is my favorite series to watch because I really believe it's a great series. These two teams are
yeah,
so evenly matched. It's primetime TV, so I just don't want to be moved away from that. And also another thing is a guy didn't get a technical. His name was Peyton Pritchard. Have you seen the video of how Jimmy Butler hurt his knee?
mm-mm.
Peyton Pritchard pulled him down and basically kicked out to his leg, and he didn't get technical.
Wow,
Nobody's talking about it like Jordan Poole against John Morant.
that's not basketball.
It was no Peyton Pritchard was literally on his back on the ground. Jimmy Butler was dribbling away for him to try to go score, right? And then that happens.
Yeah,
It was by far the most like even the Dylan Brooks thing, that was at least more of a basketball play and didn't get a tech.
it's not even in the media. Like, they really try to crucify Jordan Poole, Dylan Brooks,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yes.
this guy is just nothing.
Yes. It's
That's that
really
that
terrible.
it that's where officiating gets really weird, is because of
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Like, I understand how the game is being played, especially with you speaking on the one sidedness of of the previous game. But it becomes really weird when some plays are text immediately. It's a tech, you know what I mean? And we think like,
Yes.
ah, dude, that's a basketball play. That's not a tech. Then other times it's
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not a tech. And we're like, but God, that's a tech. That's not a basketball play. And then they're
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? And then it's like nothing. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. There's no consistency in refereeing and in officiating anymore in the NBA.
Yeah.
There's no consistency whatsoever.
I
I
honestly
feel.
would. Go ahead.
I feel like a lot of these refs need to really go back and really watch basketball and learn the game again because they're I don't know what they look what they're seeing anymore. Is I
Mhm.
literally I'll just say it. You know, with everybody, the refs are blind. They don't see everything, or they just
Mhm.
don't understand what's going on the floor. And that's
Yeah.
then you have plays like Peyton Pritchard, like you said, where he kicked out his knee, and there's like normal continue, like huh? But Dylan
Yeah.
Brooks going for the ball, Jordan Poole. Well, he didn't get anything. Jordan Poole didn't get anything, but you know what I mean. Going for the ball, it looks wrong, but these are
Mhm.
and they're like, well, these probably are bad plays.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad. I think one thing that could be the future of the NBA refereeing wise is there is limitations from when you have four people on a court. I think it's four people on a
Hmm.
court and what all of them can see. You know what I mean? So I could see in the future it just being somebody has those ESPN, the people who are, let's say we're watching basketball, right? We have cameras that are letting us watch basketball. I wouldn't be surprised if they put like 4 or 5 cameras above the court at different angles, and it's just eventually done through that. Somebody runs a video monitor, watches it, right, and then makes a call.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or like some
I,
sort of system that detects what a foul is and what a foul not is not.
I prefer that because refs have been really emotional, and I don't really want to get into this,
Mm-hmm.
but they've been really emotional lately. Especially like with that,
Mm-hmm.
what I think it was either this year or the year before that rest tech that he shouldn't have got, where he rolled the ball to the guy and got him
Mm-hmm.
kicked off the court. Like that doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. They're too
Yeah, I
emotional.
Yeah, I think that would also help with something that you're getting at is there's certain bias with certain players. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, stars do get more calls, but there's also a bias with like DeMarcus Cousins, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul. You know those guys that talk to the refs might have a little bit of too big of a mouth, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're more prone to get texts. You know what I mean? Rasheed Wallace, I think, is the all-time leader in text. I don't know if DeMarcus Cousins broke that record or not, but it,
Yeah.
I definitely think that I mean it's impossible for a human being to be perfect. So, I could see eventually us moving away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that too. It's just
Yeah.
too much emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting,
Alrighty.
man.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the only other few things I could see from the takeaways from this series before we move on is Victor Oladipo is playing phenomenal defense on Jalen Brown. It's really
Hmm.
impressive to see him guard Jalen Brown so well because he's just in his hip pocket, like it's trying to steal candy for Christmas or Halloween. I don't know, whatever you want, whatever analogy you want to use. He's like
Yeah.
guarding Jalen Brown so well, and it's kind of been like, okay, PJ Tucker guards Jason Tatum really well, and Victor Oladipo guards Jalen Brown really well, and those two guys just do their job. I
Hmm.
think the health of Jimmy Butler is going to determine this series because if they don't have Jimmy, it's impossible for them to actually pull this off. Um, yeah, but I think we're going to go 2-2 into Miami, and I think Miami's going to win enough games because they have two of the last three at home. I think I'm going to be right, but it's going to be a good series. How are you feeling about this series for the future and any other takeaways?
I'm still rocking with Boston. I know what I
What?
said. I know what I said.
Mm-hmm.
About the Heat, having a level, an offensive input that can probably possibly cannot be reached. But I still believe in Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. They've shown me, and they have those games where they really, really, really show off. So
Yes. Jason Tatum can sometimes just take over a game. It's pretty
yeah,
impressive. So yeah,
I feel like
it's a great series.
I feel like he got the mindset. So I'll still say Boston in seven.
All right, all right. No, I think this is even though they won game three, and I was talking about the officiating, it's hard to think about. Oh, is Bam gonna average 30 every night? Like, no, he's
Yeah.
not. You know what I mean? Like when
Hmm.
guys have those kind of games, it's hard to really imagine. And obviously, the Boston Celtics are gonna have 24 turnovers every game, so it's gonna. I think it's still gonna be a good series. It's gonna be
Yeah.
bedlam in the streets.
That was like a one off, just like that. I mean, they shot so many threes that game and we're knocking them down, but
Mm-hmm.
that was just a one off. But I think the real playoff series is about to start soon because they're 2-1. We're about to see a level of basketball that we've yet to see.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think about the Golden State Warriors versus the Mavericks series?
The Golden State Warriors versus the Mavericks series, I don't want to switch. I don't want to be, he's a bandwagoner. I'm sticking
Mm-hmm.
with the Mavericks. I'm gonna live. I'm gonna do with the Grizzlies like I did with the Mavs. I'm gonna live and die with the Mavericks jersey on,
Mm-hmm.
with the Luka Doncic
Okay.
number 11 right across my chest.
Okay. Okay.
Because I see what's happening. I understand
Uh
what's
huh.
happening. The Maverick, the they're gonna they're. I don't want to say it's gonna be a gentleman sweep. 5-1.
5-1.
I mean 4-1. 4-1.
4. Okay.
They're gonna gentleman sweep them. Luca's gonna take one game, and then they're gonna go back to, and then they're gonna finish off an Oracle, and then play the Celtics in the. I mean, no. Luca's gonna take one game. The Warriors are gonna finish them off in Oracle, and then take the game, and then goes to the finals against the Boston Celtics. In my opinion, but here's why. Exactly what I was getting toward when we were talking about the Miami Heat earlier. Is just that when there's a level of, I wouldn't even call, I mean, like Clay he's one of the greatest role players ever. Let's just put it out
Yes.
there. He's a role player. When you can have something like that, like Luca dropped 40, it was like 42, 40, 43, somewhere in there. I was watching the end of that game. He was knocking down threes. The net wasn't moving. He played his
Yeah.
best basketball and still
Yes.
lost.
Yeah.
He Think about this for a second. He played his best basketball and still lost. That should be very concerning for the Dallas Mavericks. Because when your
Yeah.
best player
Mm-hmm.
plays their best basketball and it's not enough to overcome a team like this,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say hang up the towel because I
But
want you guys to win. But it's it's like in a 1 in a million chance you got, like, I mean, it's like a 1 in a million chance of you taking the series at this point because they just have too much. Wiggins, for one, kudos to you, doing a phenomenal job guarding Luca. Even though he's dropping 40, you're doing exactly what you need to do. As far as that, you're long, you're lanky,
mm-hmm.
you're making it a little bit harder for him.
Mm-hmm.
Luca dropped 40 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Clay dropped 15 at the end of the
Yeah.
game. It doesn't they it's not the problem with the Dallas Mavericks is they don't have enough. With the problem that we saw before, even before, knowing that Jalen Brunson, was a great, I mean, not a great basketball player, who was a decent basketball player on the Dallas Mavericks, was that we kept saying that Luka just doesn't have the correct amount of help on his team. He has
Mm-hmm.
decent help, but not help to the level of the Golden State Warriors. You look at the Golden State Warriors; they have damn near 1 through 12.
I tried telling you.
When you have so many players on the court who could just at any moment have an offensive explosion and their name
Mm-hmm.
not Curry,
Yes.
it's scary. It's
Yes.
scary. And all
Yes.
you have to pray. You know what Luke is gonna do, but you have to pray for Jalen Brunson, but like, okay, I'm gonna drop 30, 40 this game. Like, you have to pray
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. You don't have to pray for Jordan Poole to drop 30. You know what I mean?
No.
Like that guy. That guy is so special. I mean, he's such a perfect fit in that scheme because of the way he shoots, the way he moves off the ball, his shot creation ability. You can definitely tell that man's been working with Steph because there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of similarities into the way they move and the way they shot create. So he doesn't have quite the range as Steph yet, but kudos to him for being a grinder. You know what I mean? A workaholic. Uh, that's something that's just so hard to scout coming out of college. Who knows that Jordan Poole is gonna work his behind off like that to
Mm-hmm.
become like Steph Curry in the way he moves. Like nobody could have guessed that unless your name is Jordan Poole or you know him that well. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
uh that's a great thing. And yeah, man, the Warriors are the best team in the NBA. This is
Easily.
there's different this is they're different tier teams, and basically some teams are NBA championship level teams, but they're not like super strong NBA championship level teams. They're like the
Mm-hmm.
teams that won it in the 70s most of the years. Like Rick Barry and his Nate Thurmond. That's a little bit of an older reference. People might not get that one. Um, Tim
You
Duncan
should
and an
understand.
aging David Robinson. That team
Twin
wasn't
Towers.
that amazing, but it
Yeah.
was pretty good. That's the kind of team that the Miami Heat is. The Boston
Mm-hmm.
Celtics are. Where they're NBA championship level teams, but they're just not high tier NBA championship level teams. I can make an argument that this team's better than the 2015 Golden State Warriors. They got the same top three, except you added the nuclear weapon known as Jordan Poole. You know what I mean? They got Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
We have Andre Iguodala. No. Andrew Wiggins. We have Harrison Barnes. You have Andre Iguodala. Oh, we have Jonathan Kaminga, Otto Porter. We both have the same centers. You know what I mean? At Kevin Looney. I think they had Andrew Bogut, maybe. I think Andrew
Yeah, I
Bogut's
think that
still
will
the
get.
guy there, but Kevin Looney, Andrew Bogut, they're really close.
And they have Eric
Like
out too.
yeah, that team the year after that was the 73-9 team.
Mm-hmm.
Same exact roster. Just another year built together. So this is like how high tier of the team this is. Like I've told you before, this is the greatest three guard rotation of all time. It is. Look, you could put MJ and Ron Harper and Steve Kerr. No. 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 We got, Kobe, Derek Fisher, and some Smush Parker. No. like
No.
you got the all-time guards usually don't have like other guys who are going to be in the Hall of Fame. Like there's 3 Hall of Fame guards. One of them might be the best point guard of all time. The other one is could be arguably the greatest 3 and D individually 3-point shooting and defensive two guard of all time, because guys like Reggie Miller and Ray Allen couldn't guard like that. Right?
Yeah.
So he might be the greatest that of all time. And Jordan Poole is in the conversation with James Harden to be the best player I've ever seen come off a bench at whatever their skill set was, Manu Ginobili. And
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, I know people maybe think I'm crazy, but I'd rather have Jordan Poole right now than any version of Manu, because Manu can't drop 40 in a game on the Orlando Magic. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different tier of Jordan Poole that he could get
Yeah.
hot from. Like that's how historically relevant these 3 guards are, and they're all healthy at the same time. Now, Clay might go downhill a little bit more and all those type of things year after this, but this is a rare convergence of old mixed with new talent, young talent, and they've converged. We rarely see this happen where, you know, Steve, what am I thinking of? Tim Duncan, right? When he's winning rings in the early 2000s, he's starting to age where he's like a 20 and 10 guy. Tony Parker becomes Tony Parker, where he's like a top 5 point guard in the league, and we get Kawhi, and now our team can make a second run. That rarely
Mm-hmm.
happens. You know what I mean? Young talent rarely reaches the old talent to win rings together. Look at Larry Bird. Look at Larry Bird. Larry Bird had Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and then year 10 he had Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It went downhill. Len Bias was supposed to be that guy that bridged the gap, but it's a sad story. You should watch some YouTube videos on that. He's a great what if story. uh, Even Magic Johnson. I have Kareem, James Worthy. Year 10, I mean, Kareem's old, but I still have James Worthy. And I still have Byron Scott, who was the guy with the mustache that I forgot last podcast. New Orleans Pelicans
Yeah.
coach was on ESPN. Same guys. Same guys. You know what I mean? Like it's rare for a team to be a dynasty, to be the super team that the Warriors have been, and to get young talent infused in it to kind of like lengthen its ability to be great. And this is a convergence of all these guys still being in their prime, even if some of them are at the end. You know what I mean? Dre's
Yeah,
at the end, Steph's at the end, Clay's at the end, but is this team's scary. This, I mean, I'm sorry, Dallas. I lived in the Dallas area. I really like living over here, but it's over. Like this is a great you know feel good story. You made it to the Western Conference Finals, but you're probably not going to do it next year unless your team improves because Jamal
not a
Murray is
feel
going to be
good story.
healthy. Kawhi, Paul George are going to be healthy. LeBron and Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis will probably have somebody that can actually put a team together next year. So I'm sorry, Luka, but unless your team gets a lot better, it's just not going to be the same. It's just a lot of high tier talent in the West next year. So, um, we should take in Luka Doncic as that guy. He is so special. So special, so special, so special, so special. The fact that he dropped 42 the other night, the dude's ridiculous. The team needs more talent. It's no hindrance on them, but when your best three players are all guards, and I just told you that this is the greatest three guard rotation of all time, it's not a competition. You guys can't be close. So,
Yeah,
it's for me, it's gonna be Warriors versus Heat, and it's gonna be a great series. So what do you think about? Well, do you still think okay, your NBA championship after watching a few games in is gonna be what?
Warriors Celtics.
Okay, so who you think is gonna win?
Warriors
Okay, how many games?
6.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the the Warriors, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, not Andre Iguodala, uh, Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins give them issues, and Klay Thompson, 6'7", 6'7", 6'9", and rotating in with Otto Porter. They have a lot of wing depth for a team like that. Since they used to be built to stop LeBron. Um, I'm going with Warriors and Heat, and I think the Heat are a really great matchup for them because Bam is so positionless and moves so well in space, but the Warriors just have that extra gear of offense, man, that the Heat just can't play with, and the Heat can look a little anemic sometimes offensively. It's just they just don't have enough. So I've thought about it before, but I'm sticking with Warriors in 6 as well. This is the team. This is their NBA championship to lose.
I would say that as well. And don't we can't forget that this is the same Warriors team that lost by 40 to the Memphis Grizzlies. But it's like it's never happened because we don't even like it happened. We talked about it and it went away. It's because they
Yeah.
play so phenomenally.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have I guess a gear
Mm-hmm.
where they will kind of take a back seat,
Yeah, that
but
happens sometimes.
just don't underestimate that because they will come back out like it never happened.
Yeah, they have so many veteran presences in that locker room that it's a scary team, man. It's. I mean, what's this? If that happens, how many rings is that for Steph? Is that
4.
4?
Is it
Okay,
4 or 5? Because he 2016, 2017, 2018, 4.
I guess
Because they
yeah.
lost against the
Raptors,
Toronto Raptors led by Kawhi Leonard because they were all hurt.
yeah, literally except Steph.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, man, that would really cement this team as like the team of this era. Already think they really are. Uh, I really think that this is a team that has to be put in the same breaths as those Larry Bird, Magic Johnson teams. You can put them in the same breath with the Chicago Bulls. You can put them in the same breath with um teams like the
But
Boston Celtics and them, you know, those type of things that have made had great runs over a long period of time. So, uh, yeah, I
Lakers.
yeah, and the Lakers, and I really think that the Golden State Warriors. What do you think? Does this ring, when it happens, change any of the legacies of any players? That's a good question I have for you.
On the Warriors,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say so.
Mm.
Only because for the simple fact that a lot of these players, top three players on the Warriors team, who are they? Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Steph.
Steph.
You know, and Steph. These
Mm-hmm.
guys have their legacy cemented. Klay will go down in history as the second greatest shooter of all time,
Yeah.
in my book. He will go down in history as probably the best defending, shooting combo guard. Because in history, he will
Mm.
like Draymond will probably go down as the greatest defensive player. Period. Or top 10 defensive player.
Yes. There
Period.
you go. I
There
got
you
you on
go.
that one.
Top 10 defensive player.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did. Top 10 defensive player. Steph Curry will go down as the greatest shooter of all time to ever touch a basketball, to ever lace him up.
that's a fact.
At this point, their accolades, are r- rings are a byproduct of their already growing list of accolades.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a byproduct of great basketball. You're a
Yeah.
great team. You're greatly put together. You win rings as your legend grows. That's basically what it is right
Mm-hmm.
now. So I don't think it does anything for them. And for the role players on the team, I don't think that really does anything for them as well, because it doesn't really show that you can lead a team. It just shows that you can actively play on a team and contribute to wins through however you may play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Like however you contribute on the floor, it just says that leads to
Mm-hmm.
winning basketball. You may, when it come trade deadline, you might get a little bit extra money thrown your way. You want, somebody might give you a max to kind of slowly put you into the starting lineup, or however that may go. But really, the top three guys cement it.
Yeah, I completely understand those things and agree with you on those things. So there's a lot of people that are talking about certain things that are going on during this off season and things that people are asking a lot of questions about teams that just missed those playoffs. So DeAndre Ayton, does he get the max from you, Chris?
Mm. Does he get the max? I mean, he's showing like he can, he's showing that he's getting a little bit better, but I don't think he's max contract better. I
Mm-hmm.
think we throw him a little bit extra money to try to keep him around, but he has to really really take that step forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still reeling from the Giannis beating from last year. So
Mm-hmm.
like you have to show me something for me to pay you.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally think that they might be forced into it because they really just want to win next year, right? They want to try to put all the chips in the table, and you have CP3, you have D Book, and they want to go for it. Want to be aggressive. I personally think that they should use DeAndre Ayton as leverage to go get somebody else. Go
Hmm.
sign DeAndre Ayton. He's a good enough player to warrant his contract with enough upside that makes teams at least think, okay, that's a contract I can handle on my books. And then go make a push for a max player. Go put in all your chips in the table. Go sell. You have three small forwards. You don't need all of them, right? You can go sell Mikal Bridges. You can go sell Cam Johnson. You can sell those guys. Put them in the package with DeAndre and put some picks in there, and go get yourself a blue chipper and actually build a big three or legitimate big
Hmm.
three, and then they might have something here. Um, so that's my takeaway from DeAndre Ayton. That's what I think the Suns should do, and that's what I would do.
Hey, go get Cat.
S- Yeah. So another player that's being talked about is Zach Levine. Apparently wants to go to the Lakers. What did you think about if that actually happened? And do you actually think that somebody like that would want to make that move.
I don't see why not. Um, I I mean, the point of him going to the Lakers, and if they would have, and that's just speculation, and you know how management in the Lakers is, they don't terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it would make the team younger for one.
Yeah.
You could start trying to build a future because Zach Levine is legit like that. He's shown us that he's
Mm-hmm.
grown and that he's elevated his game. So I
Yeah.
mean, get rid of some in the retirement home and throw Zach Levine in there and build a future. I mean, like, yeah, you want to win now, but I think he's ready. I think that what do you need for LeBron to succeed? Shooters.
Yeah. 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 Dear goodness, would this be a blessing from God Himself? Like Zach Levine, in so many ways, solves all their problems. He has a max contract, so you can get rid of Russell Westbrook in the deal and go send some nice, first round draft picks, whatever you got to do. If the Bulls have no leverage and they have to sell Zach Levine to the Lakers or trade Zach Levine
Hmm.
to the Lakers. But basketball wise, like the perimeter shot creator is the best complement to LeBron James. And
Hmm.
that's what Zach Levine does in spades. They don't need him for his passing ability. That's LeBron James. He can handle the basketball game. If they're healthy next year, that's a serious team. That's a
Hmm.
serious team. So if that does happen, I will jump over a chair. I'll be so elated. I don't think it
Can you
will. Go ahead.
can you jump over your podcast chair on the podcast and we record it?
I don't know if I can jump over this chair. You know what? I might buy one of those. Have you ever had little sisters before? I don't know.
No, I'm
No.
the youngest.
Okay, well, I had little sisters and they would have Barbie doll houses. So what I would
Hmm.
do is I would buy one of those Barbie doll chairs, one of those tiny ones, and I'll jump over
Hmm.
that. I'll do that out of the
That's not no.
podcast. I said I'd jump
No.
over a chair.
No, your podcast chair is what we want you to jump over.
After reviewing your proposal, I have decided to jump over my chair. That's a Barbie doll
That's not your chair though.
trail. Well, I bought it, so it is my chair.
I guess.
What about the three candidates for the Lakers job? Apparently, people are talking about those candidates. One of them's Kenny Atkins. The other
Hmm.
one is Devin Harris, I think a former NBA player. And the other one is Terry Stotts or Scotts, the old Portland Trailblazers coach with Dame and CJ. From those three guys, who would you go get?
Ooh. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What team did Kenny Atkinson come from?
He was the Brooklyn Nets coach when they had D'Lo, and they made that run when they were actually good a little bit.
It's between Kenny Atkinson and Devin Harris for me.
Really? You don't think Darius Scott's why?
I as far as they ever, I mean, yeah, they ran into the Golden State Warriors every year, but
Mm,
I mean, that team they put out the same team every year, and it
mm,
hasn't been anything special since. Um, I mean, I guess I could, but I just feel like if they run into the Warriors, he has no game plan for Steve Kerr. Like, I don't think he could do anything with that. And
mm,
I'm starting to see now that in most cases, not in every case, get me right now, in most cases, those who have played the game have a better understanding of the game as a coach.
yeah. What's your name,
Not
Steve
looking at Steve
Nash?
Nash. Not looking at Steve Nash, but looking at Steve Kerr.
Yeah, I could see that point where those people who have been in the game can really make a good breakdown and lead a team really well. Um,
So I would go with either one of those.
mhm,
I mean, really what you have to do, and it's crazy that this has to be said, but it does say something to the level of superstar that you have on that team. You have to have a coach that LeBron believes in.
Yeah. And my answer to that is the other one that's on your list is Kenny Atkins for me. What he did with the
Hmm.
Brooklyn Nets that last year, he had them playing together as a unit. He had real buy-in. He maximized what that team had. I really feel like out of those guys, I would say he's a top anywhere from 10 to 20 coach in the NBA who's just not in the NBA just because of situation. So I would go run to Kenny Atkins and say, please, Mr. Atkins, will you take this job? 5.4 seconds. I would think
Right.
about Terry Scott's because I'm a Steve Kerr uh, f- fanboy, and he's on that bench right now. He's an assistant for Steve Kerr right now. So
Hmm.
um, those are some players that I would say. So also an interesting head coaching hire that was made available last week was Mike Brown. He went to the Kings. He just hasn't gone there yet because
Mm.
he's the GSW, Golden State Warriors defensive coach. What do you think about the Kings getting him?
I think that'd be pretty interesting. Um, he's not the same Mike Brown that we had in Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah. So if, as long as that's not who he is anymore, and he's actually learned something and improved
Mm-hmm.
coaching wise, besides just coaching great players, then that
Yeah.
might be fun to watch.
Yeah. I agree, man. I agree. I think that having De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, they're such great passers. So there is real upside into the Golden State Warriors offense being executed over there. I don't really think Luke Walton was really doing all those type of things. He wasn't really just a good coach, to be honest with you. He's just I don't really think he has a feel for it. But I could see that working with him. He's been on the bench for them for, I mean, dear goodness, it might be a decade or something along those lines. Of he's been there for a while in Golden State, maybe 8, 7 years, if I'm gonna guess. So, um, I'm gonna go with that from my takeaway. I really love it for the Kings. And my next question to you is: Pat Bev went on ESPN, said some crazy stuff about Chris Paul, where
Being a
Chris
cone,
Paul's being a cone, all those type of things. What do you think about what Pat Bev said about CP3, and what's your quick takeaway from
Patrick Beverly wishes
that?
he could be who CP3 is. Point God.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that. This is one of those guys who have really shown,
Mm-hmm.
shown. Yes,
Yes.
he may not have won because he's the other team's getting his way, and he's really good at elevating players, as you've said before. And this is a great point. I'm just going to get back to what Jason said previously, was that he has a great ability to elevate players and make them look better than what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they don't play to that level because the playoffs get a little reach an extra level, then it's like, wait, now is it the team that sucks or is it CP3? Is CP3
Mm-hmm.
not a winner? But no, CP3 is a winner. He plays a winning style of basketball. Just
Yes.
because you go and growl at people all day on defense does not make you a great defensive player.
Yeah.
Does not mean you're on the level of CP3. Don't ever. Because I remember specifically that you'll be on an island sometimes getting torched. So don't do it.
Yeah, especially by people taller. Um, so I really think that he hurt himself, in my opinion. I really feel like he was doing a pretty good job before he said those things. So I feel
Mhm.
like it was a negative step in him trying to make that step. When players do stuff like this because they're interested in the idea of being on ESPN, NBA TV, doing whatever after their career's done. Look at Draymond Green. Um, so it's a negative thing for him from that standpoint because it just doesn't look good. Uh, so I really do think CP3 though is, especially when he was at his peak, man could defend the lights out the ball. Like he's a multiple time all time defender. And to come for a guy who's just aging like that, it's just it's no reason for it. So I would disagree with what he said. Um, So the next one is, and the last thing we're going to talk about before we close it off, is another thing that's been pretty funny talking about this week is JJ Redick said that Bob Cousy was playing in an era against handymen. And a lot of people are, making their takes off of Bob Cousy. They were talking about greatest point guards of all time, talking about CP3. And there's been a lot of talk about it. So what do you think about Bob Cousy, that era, guys being plumbers, him saying that nobody before the year 1980 wasn't good? Um, what do you think about that?
Um, I think during Kuzi's era, I think a lot of those guys were plumbers and handyman. They weren't true athletes as they are, in the 80s, 90s, and going forward. Um, but I wouldn't say that prior to the 80s there wasn't any spectacular talent. Bill Russell came out of that era. Wilt Chamberlain came out of that
Mm-hmm.
era. You saw Jerry
Jerry West.
West, um, Lou Alcindor. Um,
Yes.
what's the point guard name? I can't think of it.
Oscar
Oscar
Robertson.
Robertson. Oscar Robertson. Like,
Dave Bing.
yeah, these guys, George Gervin, just
Mm-hmm.
Dr. J.
Dr. J.
These you can't. I mean, I listen, JJ Redick, I respect you for sure.
Mm-hmm.
As an analyst, as a basketball mind, I respect you. But you can't say that because there's great players that came prior to the 80s. I mean, yeah, you can like at the beginning of basketball, yeah, they were plumbers and handyman because this was a very new sport. But as the time went on, actual
Mm-hmm.
athletes start popping up in the NBA. We can't discredit what's been done. Pistol Pete Maravich came out. We can't discredit those who came before the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this is such a something that I hate about basketball talk is these broad statements like this get used just so often it's ridiculous. Like people saying, even though we're talking about 1960s, 1970s, guys from that era might say, "Oh, those guys in the 2000s, 1990s, they couldn't play our toughness. They couldn't play with our physicality. Anybody after the year 1980, they couldn't play in our era." Right? They'll say the exact same thing in a different way to the other people, blanket statements where they put things to an extremes, right? And where it's just not true. The true fact is those guys could play. Is the average basketball player by a gazillion miles? Yes. Is most players better now? Yes. That's the honest truth. Is there certain parts of those guys' games that are ridiculous? Yes. Have you seen Bob Cousy and Pistol Pete Maravich handle the basketball and pass the basketball? They're some of the most fun people you will ever see. You'll see behind the
Yeah,
pack passes. You'll see fake passes. You'll see passes that you don't even think make sense. Those little random Pistol Pete Maravich used to be able to take his hand and just like move it like he's like Iron Man. He's got lightning shooting out of it. Like
yeah,
it's just ridiculous. Like these guys really were gifted. I mean, guys, we're talking about the top tier guy. Wilt Chamberlain's better than anybody that's playing it today. Now, some people may disagree with me, but how about watching a guy that's 7'1", has what, a 7'8" wingspan, can dribble the basketball, does he went when he got out of college, he went and played for the Harlem Globetrotters. So he could literally be on the fast break, hit a fake pass going this way and pass it that way in the fast
yeah.
break. No look passes. Dribble to handle the basketball, had an unstoppable post fadeaway, and could touch the top of the backboard. Freak of nature that makes Giannis look human. He's
Mm-hmm.
more athletic version of Giannis running up and down the court. He looks like the Flash. No, that era was not overly weak. It was just behind skill wise. And yes, the average player was much better today. But there's some Jerry West. I mean, that dear goodness would he fit in today's era. That man had a strap on him. But he
Mm-hmm.
had crossovers. He had, easy step back side steps. He had a great fadeaway. He was highly skilled. Great passer. Really phenomenal player. like, Dave Being really was before his time handling the basketball crossover. Tiny Archibald, the man averaged 30 and 10 in a season. They tiny crossover, make great passes, get to the basket, finish around the rim. Those guys would be amazing today with spacing. They didn't have spacing back then. They had three people in the paint just sitting there because they weren't that skilled from shooting that far out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, Kareem, don't even get me started on Kareem. Kareem still would be the best player in the NBA today, too. Like, those guys, Wilt dominated the 60s, and talent wise, I know people, Bill Russell dominated winning, Wilt dominated talent. Kareem
Yes.
dominated the 70s. Both of those guys are better than Giannis is right now, better than Luca is right now, better than LeBron is right now, not his peak, right now.
Mhm.
Like, these what are we talking about here? Because when you say stuff like that, you make a broad stroke and you
Yeah.
completely just disregard everything. You know what I mean? When we don't look back at the past, we don't learn. We don't know what great players did before us. You know what I mean? Like it those those guys, there's some dogs in that era. Pistol Pete Maravich, Bob McAdoo. Like Bob McAdoo was a 6'9" version of the stretch four before his time,
Yeah.
dribbling the ball, hitting great mid-range shots, averaging like 30 a game. Like you guys, no. They weren't getting a paid enough money. That's why they were plumbers. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
I, could every player beat everybody else? No. Is Bob
No.
Cousy going to be, better than CP3 in this era? No. Right? But
No.
there are some top tier guys that would be better than a lot of guys in this era. And I've even
Mhm.
heard Bill Russell being talked about like not being on a roster. Bill Russell's a better version of Bam Adebayo. Pass, six foot
Yeah.
nine, guard everybody on the floor. He's just more athletic. So imagine Bam, but better. 2.0 Bam is Bill Russell. Like, you go
One thing I
ahead.
will say, yeah, one thing I will say with this is that it happens way too often in our favorite sport is that to uplift one, you have to push down the other.
Yes.
But a lot of these guys, when they speak, because they,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's just what they believe, but it's all in generalizations. Because
Yes.
say if you were to see somebody from the 50s, right, and you would ask him who's the best basketball player, he would probably say
Bob
Bill
Cousy,
Russell, Bob Cousy.
50s.
You know,
Yeah.
because he's seen those eras. He will only be able to speak on what he's been of what he's seen. JJ
Hmm.
Redick can only speak from what he's seen. I mean, I don't know if
Yes.
he was born in the 80s or 70s. I'm not exactly sure on
Mathematically
that.
speaking, it's probably
Probably this
1980.
1980.
Yeah.
He probably grew up watching the players of the 80s and was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing."
Larry
90s,
Magic.
Jordan
Yeah.
comes out, you know what I mean? Oh, this is amazing. You know what I mean? Oh, now I'm here. Like he can only speak from experience. A lot of these guys
Yeah.
speak from experience, but they're not looking at the whole picture. The whole
Yes.
picture is that before the 80s, there were great basketball players. That's the entire picture.
Yes.
You cannot discredit the people that Jason have mentioned, as far as Pistol Pete Maravich, Wilt
Jared
Chamberlain,
Bims.
Jerry West, Nate Thurman. I mean, not Tiny Archibald, Dave Bing,
Hmm.
uh, Hondo. You can't discredit these guys.
No.
Kareem, Oscar Robertson. You can't discredit them. George Gervin. You cannot. Dr. J. You cannot discredit
I didn't
because
even
they've
name Dr.
paved the
J.
way.
Yeah.
They've paved the way for the players in the 80s.
Yes.
These players that came 50s to 70s before the 80s,
Yeah.
these are the prototypes for what you see later on.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are prototypes. Jerry West is James Harden's prototype. Good passer, great perimeter shot creator. You know what I mean? Bill Russell's Ben Wallace's and Bam Adebayo's prototype. Wilt Chamberlain is Giannis's prototype. The only real prototype of Giannis is Wilt because of the
Hmm.
stride, the athleticism, the straight line athleticism. They just do it in different ways because Wilt had more post skill. You know what I mean? Like guys like Tiny Archibald and Dave Being are a lot like modern guards. Think of De'Aaron Fox, those quick footed, good passers, guys can get to the basket and finish. Like Isaiah Thomas. Those are the kind of guys, these guys lead into what we're seeing today. Dr. J and David Thompson, Those guys flew in the air. Flew. When I first watched David Thompson, I was like, wait, did I actually put in a Michael Jordan highlight? Like, if he flies like that, like, no, trust me,
Yeah.
it'll take you 0.345 seconds to realize David Thompson gets called the nickname Skywalker for a reason. He walks on sky.
Right.
Okay. Um, like guys like D Wade, guys like MJ,
Yeah.
Zach Levine, those high flyers, Clyde Drexler. They all come from Dr. J and David Thompson. Like all these guys come from another guy. You know what I mean? That's a great point that you brought up. They should be respected. And it's something like this, it's out of pocket for sure.
Yeah. One thing you didn't mention was, in my opinion, and I think you would agree with this opinion, is that Pistol Pete birthed Steph Curry.
Oh yes, especially when it comes to creativity. People don't
Yeah.
understand how ridiculous Steph is, even another guy like that is Kyrie. Like where Pissa Pete might be the most skilled player of all time because of the way he handled the basketball and the way he shot and the different things he could do passing the basketball. It's like watching an and one mixtape at an extremely elite. It's like Jason Williams 2.0, except he's really
Yeah.
an actually like elite basketball player. Like Jason Williams was fun to watch, but he wasn't ever an all star. He didn't ever even lead the league in scoring like Pistol Pete Marriage did. So
Yeah.
it's he's in the creativity and the way he plays. Yes, it's like Steph and Kyrie, where they're just so ridiculously skilled. So yeah, these guys birth the newer guys. I completely agree with you, Chris.
The thing is that if there was a 3-point line during Pistol Pete Maravich
Oh
time,
my
he would be
god,
an all-time leading scorer. He
the
would be an
man.
all-time leading scorer.
I think the 3-point line came on later in his career that just didn't
Yeah.
implement it. I think one year he
Yeah.
shot like 80 or 70%, getting like 10 shots up or something
Yeah.
ridiculous like that, ridiculously high percentage. Um, yeah, like even if the funny thing is people are talking about Bob Cousy versus CP3, like Bob Cousy is the kind of guy that birthed CP3. Like
Mhm.
that's the earlier version of CP3. Like Bob Cousy was a ridiculous passer at setting up his teammates and making everybody better. He was an integral part in the fact that the Boston Celtics won those 11 rings. So, yeah, man. It's
Ran the fast break like no other.
yeah. Yeah, the Wizard of Westwood. The Wizard of Worcester, I
Mhm.
think. Wizard of Worcester. Yeah, he's actually,
Worcester.
he's from Worcester College, right? Worcester University. Boom.
I didn't
I'm
know
not.
that. I was like,
You did not know, Bob? Yeah, Bob Cousy's from Worcester. He's the greatest player
wow.
ever to play at Worcester for sure.
He's an Ohio guy. Got
Yeah,
it.
but he didn't go to Ohio State, which is surprising
Ah,
because
Worcester.
John
Maybe
Lucas
Worcester
did.
was the school then.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So, do you have any other takeaways before we wrap this puppy up?
Not a takeaway, but I did just want to have a quick tidbit about what happened in Buffalo. Just wanted to say R.I.P. to all those lost lives out there, all those lost souls. We at the Basketball Addicts, you know what I mean. We it's all about love. Hate never wins. You know what I mean. We can all exist together. We don't have to have such racial discrimination and prejudice and hatred toward one another. Um, love me like I love you. Look at me and Jason. Like it's possible to coexist. Jason was my best one of my best friends.
Mm-hmm. Ditto.
So we just wanted to say our condolences to the families of those people who lost their lives in Buffalo.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with those condolences. I think anything like that happens, man, it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing in our society where things like that still linger. It's really
Yeah,
just truly sad. Um, it's just the reality of the world that we live in. Some people are just off the rockers sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah,
but love wins in the end. So
yeah, yeah.
alrighty. So off of a sad note, sorry about that. That's all of me. I just felt like we had to address that.
Mhm,
That's like that was something recent. It impacts all of us whether we acknowledge it or not.
mhm.
But we have come to the end of our podcast. Thank you all for listening. I'm sure Jason has something for us. Did we reach our
Hey,
goal?
we're trying to help us try to reach our goal of having more reviews on our podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those things of those nature. Really helps us grow. Really helps us get recognized. We're really striving to give you guys the best content possible. um if you're coming from the TikTok side of things, you're a new follower, you're a new listener, we really appreciate you. We were going to keep you on this journey here. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's and we really appreciate those things, and it's going to be a great time.
Always great podcast with planner.
Heard it here